All right. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Pigskin Mafia podcast live on YouTube. I am your host this afternoon. Well, exactly noon. Uh, my name's TJ Riddell. I have been absent due to an illness last week. I was supposed to make the week 3 recap and also week 4 predictions. But for today, I'm going to talk about the week 3 and week 4 recaps. I'm going to try to simmer down on the week 3. Just talk about a couple games because I have a long list of games for week 3, and I got to say, there's a lot of games that I picked correctly in this week, but I'll just go over some of the games, top 5 games I think were good games, because there is a lot of blowouts on here. But I will talk more about week 4 because that was the main week that we needed to talk about. But yeah, I was ill last week. I was supposed to do the PMP on Thursday. Then it went to Friday, but I still felt bad. So I was like, you know what? I'll just end up doing it next week. Just combine an episode. So here we are. So we're gonna go over week 3. On Friday, September 16th, you have Florida State traveling to Louisville. And I thought this would be a great game to watch because you had Jordan Travis and also Malik Cunningham, 2 great quarterbacks. Jordan Travis, so he left the game with 4 minutes left in the second quarter. Devastating injury for Florida State, but we'll see if he can bounce back. But Florida State takes the win, 35-31. Jordan Travis' stats were 13 for 17, 157 passing yards, 2 touchdowns and 1 interception before he left before the end of the half. So he was on pace to get over 250 passing yards, maybe 275 in that game. And Malik Cunningham, he had 21 for 34, 243 passing yards, 1 touchdown and 1 interception. But his running ability, 17 carries, 127 yards, and 2 touchdowns. It just seems like Louisville uses Malik Cunningham as their gadget guy. Meanwhile, Florida State seems like the Florida State of old, and they're undefeated still. But it was a great game to watch. I enjoyed it for the most part while I was tuckered in while I was sitting there watching the game. So good win for the Noles and tough loss for the Cardinals. Next game that I want to talk about is the BYU and Oregon game. I picked BYU in this game, but it turns out I was wrong about Oregon. They started to bounce back after that Georgia loss. 41-20, Oregon takes the win. BYU is a tough team, and I really enjoy watching BYU play, but Oregon really stepped it up a notch in this game, and they've been stepping it up a notch, and we'll talk more about that later on. Next game, which really I thought wasn't going to be a good game, but it turned out to be a scare for Arkansas. They played against Missouri State, and I did pick Arkansas to win, and they came back and won 38-27. This was a concern for me. I thought they were going to blow Missouri State out, but Missouri State competed, and they pretty much showed that they could play with the SEC, and probably better than Missouri, so 38-27 Arkansas. Next game, we'll go one more ranked game, and then we'll go an unranked game, which I think I need to talk about that game. So the last ranked game that I want to talk about is the Miami and Texas A&M game. It was a boring game at first, but then, I mean, the defense took over in this game, and it was the first start for Max Johnson, and he had a pretty decent game. Miami couldn't get anything going. Uh, it just felt like they were frauds after this game. 17-9, Texas A&M won, and I picked Miami. So there you have it. Texas A&M proved me wrong in that week. Last game that I want to talk about is Troy at Appalachian State. Now this game was down to the wire. Last play of the game, basically. Appalachian State's quarterback Bryce, he drops back, throws a bomb. It looks like it's going to be intercepted, and then it was caught by Appalachian State Mountaineer. They scored and scored right as soon as the whistle was blown. As soon as the game clock was hitting zero, Appalachian State won 32-28, and I did pick Appalachian State to win. So hats off to the Appalachian State Mountaineers taking out Texas A&M the week before, and then they have college game day, and they absolutely just had a terrific game against Troy. And not knocking Troy. Troy did a good job against Appalachian State. But, yeah. So, hang on one second. Let me take care of this because it's distracting me. All right. Now, we're going to talk about week 4. Now, this week was a little bit surprising to me because I got 6 games wrong and 18 right. Still not a bad number, but I was very disappointed in some of the teams, and frankly, one of them is my team. Very disappointed. But let's go ahead and talk about it. Week 4 recap. Now, this game was a Thursday night. It's unranked. You had West Virginia traveling to Virginia Tech. West Virginia being 1-2, Virginia Tech being 2-1. And Grant Wells, I mean, he did not do that well in this game. 16 for 35, 193 passing yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. It looked close at first up until the late third quarter, and pretty much West Virginia took over and won this game against the Hokies, winning 33-10 after losing to the Kansas Jayhawks. I mean, 2 weeks ago, or 2 weeks ago prior to last week. JT Daniels, 20 for 30, 230 passing yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions. Good for him. And this kid has been impressing me this year. CJ Donaldson, 23 carries, 106 rushing yards. He didn't score, though, but he is physical, and he will get 100 yards on you or on your defense. Now, will he do that against Texas this week? I don't know. We'll have to see. But good win for the Mountaineers as they moved to 2-2, and the Hokies, they got to get something going because they're at 2-2 with a loss from Old Dominion and now West Virginia. Next game was a barn burner. Not really a barn burner, more like a defensive struggle. Brennan Armstrong from Virginia taking on Garrett Strader from Syracuse. Virginia 2-1, Syracuse 3-0. Syracuse takes the win 22-20. I did pick Syracuse to win this game, so this makes me 2-0. Good. And this was a Friday night game. Bryce Armstrong didn't do nearly as well as I thought he would do. He's got 50% completion during this game, 19 for 38, 138 yards passing, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Garrett Schrader, on the other hand, 22 for 33, so not bad, but he did throw 277 passing yards. But he threw a pick. So it was a good game. It was down to the wire. Syracuse taking the win 22-20 in last Friday's matchup. So now we're going to talk about the top 25 real quick of week 4. Now, this was one of the disappointing games to me because I picked it against the ranked team. Iowa State at home against Baylor. I thought Iowa State was going to be the ones to beat Baylor at home. And they didn't do their job because Baylor really controlled the game, the entire game. And Iowa State started to come back a little bit, but it wasn't enough against Baylor. And, it was just a dominant display by Baylor, in my opinion. Shapen, 19 for 26, 238 passing yards, and 3 total touchdowns. Deckers for Iowa State, 23 for 36, 284 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. Reese, 21 carries, 78 yards, and a touchdown. Brock, 14 carries, 73 yards, and 1 touchdown. Holmes, the top receiver for Baylor, 3 receptions, 92 receiving yards, and 1 touchdown. Sorry, allergies are kicking my butt today. I just got mowing today, folks. If you don't mow your lawn, it's going to grow a bit. But back to the Iowa State and Baylor game. Noel, he had 7 receptions, 120 receiving yards, but no touchdowns. So they couldn't get Noel in the end zone, but he was killing those corners for Baylor. And I gotta say, Baylor did a good job controlling the game throughout the entire game. Even though it was 7-7 at the end of the first, Baylor really started to take control in the second quarter. At the half, 17-14 before the half ended. Iowa scored within 46 seconds at the end of the half. Then Richard Reese runs a 19-yard touchdown into Iowa State. And then Gavin Holmes, 38-yard reception. And Blake Shapen threw an absolutely beautiful dart to him. So, Baylor did a good job controlling that game, but they got a tough task ahead of them because they got Oklahoma State coming into Waco. Next game, we'll talk about Georgia squaring off against Kent State. I did pick Georgia, but what the hell? 39-22? I was talking all this good stuff about Georgia. But look what happened. First quarter, 12-3 in the first quarter. 1 touchdown. And after that, Kent State held them to 5 points. Georgia got a safety defensively, but first quarter, the offense wasn't clicking for Georgia. After that, Brock Bowers' 75-yard run. Then Kent State started to play close against Georgia. with the Devontae Walker 56-yard touchdown from Colin Schlee. And that brought the score to 12-10. That's where Georgia fans were like, "What is happening right now?" I was even watching it on, or not the game itself, but the score. And I was like, "What is Georgia doing? Is Kirby Smart taking a vacation or something?" And then that's when Georgia led in the half, 26-13, with a Stetson Bennett run, and then. I mean, I was just unimpressed by this win for Georgia, but kudos to Kent State after being blown out by Oklahoma. And I'm sorry for calling y'all tomato cans because y'all played the number one team in the country and brought them to their limit. So now I'm very confused on who the best team in college football is, which I will say this. That it is good for college football to guess who is the best team in college football and to not have a definitive top team in college football. So I'm really glad that Kent State really showed how unimpressive Georgia really was in that game. Maybe it was an off day for Georgia. I don't know. I really don't know. We'll see. Next game, though, Maryland traveling to Michigan. This game was interesting. I didn't think Maryland had a slim chance in hell to face Michigan. But Maryland brought the fight to Michigan. It was 17-13 at the half. Michigan scores in the last 22 seconds in the half. Blake Corum, 33-yard run. It was awesome seeing him run in that game. But, man, that's all that Michigan had in that game was Blake Corum, especially in the first half. I mean, that was just a very unimpressive first half. Then things started to look good for Michigan as the fourth quarter came around. Roman Wilson with a 20-yard reception for a touchdown thrown by J.J. McCarthy. Then Talia Tagovailoa throws a touchdown to Ty Felton with 9:10 left to play. The two-point conversion failed on that play. Then Jake Moody kicks a field goal. Blake Corum with a 47-yard run for a touchdown with an extra point behind it. Then the score was 34-19 with 3 minutes and 31 seconds left to play. Maryland didn't score until the last 45 seconds left to play. 18-yard pass from Billy Edwards to Dupre because Talia Tagovailoa got hurt. And he absolutely had a great game except for the 2 interceptions they had. But I don't really blame him. His receivers weren't playing up to par. But I got to say, Maryland's better than I thought. Maryland played SMU, beat SMU. I thought SMU was going to beat Maryland. And I was like, okay, well, Maryland, good game, Maryland. And then they go into Ann Arbor. I was like, oh, man, this game's going to be a blowout. Just like the times that they play against Ohio State, man, it's going to be a blowout because Michigan is good this year. Well, they proved me wrong, just like a lot of teams. But I did pick Michigan to win, so that still counts. Now, if I put the points and the spread on there, then I would be absolutely wrong, even though I picked Michigan to win. Next game we'll talk about. Very exciting game. I thought it would be close. but I picked Wake Forest because I thought Wake Forest had the better team. I thought they had a better game plan against Clemson. But it was back and forth between these two Goliaths. And I got to say, Clemson impressed me in this game. This was their first actual test going into Wake Forest, going into Winston-Salem to play against the Demon Deacons. But they played a good game. DJ Ugalele, that's what I call him. He had a terrific performance. 26 for 41, 371 passing yards, and 5 touchdowns. He was hitting receivers right in the breadbasket. Every play, pretty much, they threw a pass. Will Shipley, 20 carries, 104 yards. I knew this kid was going to be good as soon as he filled in the shoes for Travis Etienne. And, man, he really stepped up to the plate. Sam Hartman, he had a terrific game as well. 20 for 29, 337 yards passing, 6 touchdowns. Banks, receiving yards, 141 off of 6 receptions and 2 touchdowns against that Clemson defense. Now, this has a nominee, in my opinion, as one of the best games in this year's college football. I enjoyed this game. I really did. At first, I was going back and forth with games, and then Clemson and Wake Forest, they just would not stop scoring on each other. And I was like, damn, this is a good game. And I thought Wake Forest was going to beat the hell out of them, but it was back and forth. They were both hitting each other with what they got. It was like a heavyweight championship fight. I thought Wake Forest had a better chance of winning this game, but Clemson proved to be wrong. And I might go as far to say that Clemson might win the ACC this year after this performance. But they got a tough task again. And we'll talk about that game later. But next game was a game that the ranked teams should have won, and they did. 33-14. Penn State takes the victory. I picked Penn State. They took care of business in the first half, but the Chippewas kind of creeped in a little bit in the first half, tied it up until Katron Allen ran a touchdown for 14 yards to put the Nittany Lions back on top, 21-14. And then Penn State slowly spread the lead away. But Richardson for Central Michigan, 26 for 45, 235 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Sean Clifford, 22 for 34, 217 passing yards, 3 touchdowns. Katron Allen, 13 carries, 111 yards, 1 touchdown. Nichols, 13 carries, 67 rushing yards. But look at this stat right here. Carrier, 11 receptions, 111 receiving yards. 111 receiving yards with 11 receptions from one player. Penn State kept him out of the end zone, but same thing from the last couple games I was talking about. They couldn't guard him, but they kept him out of the end zone. So this was a game that Penn State had to really impress the playoff committee, but they didn't put up the points they needed. They didn't really impress anybody. That that was another disappointing game to me. Now, this game did go a little bit the way I thought it would go. I thought that Pitt was going to allow Rhode Island to score a little bit. Rhode Island's a pretty decent team, so I'll give them that. But Pitt took care of business, 45-24. Now they bump up to 3-1. Keaton Slovis, 20 for 27, 189 passing yards. No touchdowns on that one. Abani Kanda, 19 carries, 177 rushing yards, and 4 touchdowns. I thought Pitt needed to run the ball more, and it's looking like they're running the ball more, and they're doing a damn good job of it. And I was very impressed with that kid this past weekend. And good job, Pitt Panthers. Now we get into the 2:30 games. I watched this game, and I'm telling you right now, if you were watching this game after the Longhorns scored, Donovan Smith and the Red Raiders were about to take the snap, why in the hell would ESPN cut to a freaking baseball game when he wasn't even going to hit the home run? I lost my damn mind when this happened. ESPN has become such a laughing stock of a network. What happened to highlights? If he hit it, keep it as a highlight, bring it up later in the game. I'm cool with that. But to have it side by side and have those commentators over the game that I'm watching, side by side, live. Why would you do that, ESPN? I'm watching a fucking game. And then there's people that want to defend that. No, I'm watching a game. I don't care about baseball history. To be frank, I hate baseball. I know it's America's pastime. But when my Longhorns are on, you don't put stupid steroid using Aaron Judge on the side-by-side. If he hits that 61st home run, good for him. I don't care. I'm more busy watching a college football game that has huge implications for possibly a Big 12 championship. Because both those teams deserve recognition. And you want to put Aaron Judge side by side. They did it to the Clemson and Wake Forest game too. I should have read about that beforehand. That's disrespectful to those kids that are playing on the field. It's disrespectful for the fan bases that are watching those games. And it's disrespectful. It's disrespectful to the universities that are being paid by ESPN. This is why I watch SEC on CBS, because CBS focuses just on them. Now, if they want to talk about Aaron Judge, they bring up a highlight. That's what you do, ESPN. That's what you do. But you want to bring up a baseball game and talk about the historic 61st home run for Aaron Judge, break some guy's record that I don't even know about. Six decade old record that someone held. And if you want to boo me, boo me. I don't care. Put it on a fucking highlight reel and then bring back the game. Just like when Brent Musburger was on ESPN. All right, so I'm done with my rant about that. Now, this game, it was kind of back and forth until the third quarter where Texas kind of extended their lead to 31-17. Bijan Robinson with a beautiful 40-yard run. Then, momentum shifted quick as soon as Texas A&M or Texas Tech scored. And so Roderick Thompson got into that end zone. Momentum changed. And then Texas Tech started to come back. And it looked like Texas Tech was going to win right there. But then Texas started driving down the field and kicked a beautiful 48-yard field goal by Bert Auburn. Took us into overtime. Now, I'm not too mad about this game because I was already mad about the game. But I was more pissed off about Aaron Judge and his stupid record that he didn't even get. But I knew it was going to be a tough game for Texas and adversity was going to strike. But I did pick Texas to win. But where was the defense in that fourth quarter? That late third and fourth quarter for Texas. Pretty much the whole game. Played sloppy. But that was probably the best Texas Tech game I've watched in a long time since the Michael Crabtree catch. Hats off to Joey McGuire for finding a good game plan to beat Texas. Hudson Card had a pretty terrific game. 20 for 30, 277 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. Bijan Robinson had a good game up until that fumble. But I thought the overall performance on Texas was bad and subpar. The offensive line wasn't really blocking very well. They pretty much got bullied by the Texas Tech defense. But Bijan Robinson, 16 carries, 103 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns, and a fumble. Donovan Smith, 38 for 56, 331 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. So Roderick Thompson, 17 carries, 70 yards, and 1 touchdown. Price, man, 13 receptions, 98 yards. Again, they were able to hold him from the end zone, but could not hold him every time he caught the ball. So, this was a wake-up call for Texas. First road game, it's going to be tough, but great teams overcome that adversity. And this did not look like the same Texas team that I saw against Alabama. So it's back to where is Texas? Where are they as a team? So are we going to be competitive or are we going to play down to their level, to what we think is their level, but they're going to play better than us? You can't do that. Especially with the Big 12 this year because everybody's good this year, even Kansas. So hats off to the Red Raiders. They won, but I'm not going to get into much about the kid pushing a Texas player. I think it's disgraceful. I think they should be fined more, in my opinion. And I hope they find that jerk and they ban him from Jones AT&T Stadium or whatever that stadium's called. I hope he gets banned and he's never ever allowed into a stadium in the state of Texas. And that goes for any fan that wants to be disrespectful towards any college. I don't care if you're a rival or not. I think it's a disgrace to the sport. And that Texas player had a lot of good self-control, because if that were somebody else, I think that kid would have been dead. I think that kid would have been stomped to the ground because of that. But hats off to that kid that got pushed. I don't know who got pushed, but he had a lot of composure about that situation, and he handled it the way it's supposed to be handled. But I wouldn't disagree if he punched him in the face, So, but it was a very good game for Texas Tech and a much needed win after losing to NC State. Next game, we're going to talk about Florida. Number 20, Florida, traveling to Knoxville, Tennessee to take on the Volunteers. Now, this was another game day game. Big rivalry game for the SEC. Florida taking on the Tennessee Volunteers. And this was a pretty good game. Hendon Hooker, 22 for 28, 349 passing yards, 2 touchdowns. Anthony Richardson, he threw 24 for 44. Didn't make as many completions as he would like, but he got the yardage. 453 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 interception. But it looked like Tennessee pretty much controlled this game up until the fourth quarter. Florida didn't get to 33 until 17 seconds left in the game, and then they kicked an onside and Tennessee recovered. But Tennessee pretty much controlled this game. I pretty much thought they were going to control this game. 38-33, the Volunteers moved to 4-0. Congratulations, Tennessee. Y'all finally got to that point that everybody's been talking about, the potential that everybody's been talking about for Tennessee. I think they're going to pose a great challenge for Kentucky and Georgia. We'll see. But for Florida, this is a tough loss. This is a learning curve for those young cats. But they will be better. I think Florida will be better this year. Next game, nobody thought this would happen. You got number 25 Miami squaring off against Middle Tennessee State in Miami. Pretty obvious choice, right? You would have picked Miami. Wrong. 45-31, Middle Tennessee State won, and I'm going to say this. Miami got their ass kicked. They got their fucking ass kicked in this game. Cunningham for Middle Tennessee State. The Blue Raiders, by the way, that's their mascot. 16 for 25. That's pretty low completion and attempts, right? 408 yards against Miami's defense. 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. Now, Peasant ran 19 carries, 74 yards, 1 touchdown. Now, this kid, England Chisholm. This kid, 5 receptions, 180 or 102 receptions, 169 receiving yards, 2 touchdowns. What does he have for this season? 5 receptions, 184 receiving yards total. He didn't reach 100 until he came in to Miami and stole the freaking show off of 2 receptions, which were 2 touchdowns. Miami's offense couldn't get anything going. Van Dyke got hurt. This was a ugly loss for Miami. This was one of the teams that disappointed me very much. Mainly, the roster on paper is 10 times better than Middle Tennessee State. But Miami didn't have the heart. So they got their ass kicked by Middle Tennessee State. Moving on. I don't want to talk about that bum-ass team anymore. Next, number 15, Oregon, travels to Washington State, which I thought was going to be a close game. But I picked Oregon to win, and they did come out with a win, 44-41. The Pac-12 has turned into the Big 12. Shootout city, right? So pretty much a back-and-forth type of game up until the fourth quarter. Oregon starts to come back. Washington State extended the lead 34-22. Then Oregon just started unloading on Washington State with a 10-point lead. Washington State didn't score until the last second of the game, and it was just too short. Bo Nix had a terrific game, 33 for 44, 428 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, and 1 interception. He's starting to come around for the Ducks. The Ducks are looking a lot better than what they've been playing as. Irving, 11 carries, 100 yards, 81 yards rushing. No touchdowns. Franklin, 5 receptions, 137 receiving yards, 1 touchdown. Ward, 37 for 48, 375 passing yards. What hurt him, though, was 2 interceptions. He did throw 2 touchdowns, but what hurt him was the 2 interceptions in that game. Rushing yards, they couldn't get anything happening on the ground. Watson with 12 carries, 36 rushing yards, and 1 touchdown. Stribling, 5 receptions, 84 yards, 1 touchdown. Terrific game to watch, I would imagine. I didn't get to watch that game, so I'm just happy that Oregon won that game. Next game, a close game. I didn't think this would be close, but it was close. But Ole Miss takes the win. They were up at one point, 35-14, and then Tulsa started to come back somehow. And after 14-38, nobody scored, and pretty much Ole Miss's defense held in tight and escaped Tulsa from a comeback. 35-27 was the final score. Not very big stats here, except for Judkins, 27 carries, 140 yards, which is kind of expect better numbers out of an Ole Miss running back. And 2 touchdowns. Jackson Dart, 13 for 24, 154 passing yards, and 2 touchdowns. Bren, 7 completions out of 13 attempts, 1 112 passing yards, 1 touchdown. Jackson, though, 8 carries, 77 yards rushing, and no touchdown. I think if he would have had more carries, that would have turned the tide for the Golden Hurricanes. But it just so happens that Ole Miss had the better defense, and the comeback fell short for Tulsa. But Ole Miss has got a big game next week, so they better be ready for this team because this team is pretty good. But they did, however, didn't play well against Northern Illinois, Kentucky, who's ranked 8th in the country at this point. But this looked like a back and forth game up until the third quarter, fourth quarter, and then NIU started to come back. Will Levis, 18 for 26, 303 passing yards, 4 touchdowns. Smoke, 12 carries, 85 yards rushing. Robinson, 7 receptions, 147 receiving yards, and 2 touchdowns. Hampton, 13 for 25, 196 passing yards, and 1 touchdown. Mark Stoops has really built Kentucky to be the next big thing for the SEC East after Kirby. But with wins like this, you're not going to get anywhere. So if this makes the Ole Miss and Kentucky matchup this coming up week much harder to pick. So I expect a good physical brawl, but we'll see. Next game. Oh, man. Boy, was I wrong about this game. This game came down to the wire. I thought Arkansas was going to strum Texas A&M. But it looks like it was a defensive battle. Arkansas did score 14-0 in the first quarter. That's why I was like, oh, there it is. Arkansas is going to be good this year. What did I tell y'all? And then Evan Stewart with a touchdown pass. And then Damani Richards. This was the craziest defensive play this year. Just looking at it this year. This was one of the craziest defensive plays I have ever seen this year. Possibly my entire life. An 82-yard fumble return for a touchdown by Damani Richardson. That was perfect if you're a defender. Now, on special teams, that wasn't the case. They missed a two-point conversion pass. Jimbo, what are you doing, dude? Just kick the field goal. You don't need a 2-point conversion in the second quarter. This is why people don't like Jimbo Fisher. Overrated coach. But then Texas A&M pretty much controlled the third quarter. Devin Akane with a 9-yard touchdown run to put it at 20-14. Then they kicked a 31-yard field goal to make it 23-14. Arkansas was starting to come back. KJ Jefferson, the human highlight reel for Arkansas, made it 23-21. Then Texas A&M was able to hold. Like I said, A&M does not have a good offense. I think that has a lot to do with the play call. Now, A&M fans, you could debate with me, or you can agree with me about it. But we all know that Jimbo Fisher is pretty much an overrated coach. Well, he won a national championship with Florida State. He had talent. He had talent on both sides of the ball. He had a great coaching staff over there at Florida State. Now he's over at Texas A&M, and we're not seeing the quarterback guru that everybody talks about. He's not a quarterback guru. He's just a fraud. He's a flake. Him and Brian Kelly really get underneath my skin. But great defensive outing for Texas A&M. I told everybody that Texas A&M has a phenomenal defense. A great defense to help anchor that offense. It wasn't the case for Appalachian State, and that's what got me worried in that Miami game. But they showed up in that Miami game. They showed up against number 10 Arkansas at the time. They held KJ Jefferson 12 for 19, 171 passing yards, 2 touchdowns. They didn't create turnovers as far as interceptions, though. KJ Jefferson, 18 carries, 105 rushing yards. So that's 276 total yards just by KJ Jefferson. Max Johnson, he did all right. 11 for 21, 151 passing yards and 1 touchdown. A Kane did the job for Texas A&M offensively. I said give that guy the rock more. 19 carries. Listen to this stat. 19 carries, 159 rushing yards. 40 yards away from hitting that 200 mark against a really good Arkansas defense. That's why I was worried about that Missouri State game that Arkansas played. You can't come back on a team like Texas A&M's defense. Clearly it showed. They barely lost by 2, 23-21. But it showed. Now, if you do that against Alabama, there's no chance. There's no chance. If you do that against Georgia, there is absolutely no chance. Do that against LSU. I don't think you're going to have a chance. Mississippi State, maybe. But Mississippi State also has an explosive offense, so put 2 and 2 together. You know. Ole Miss can't do that. You need to help KJ Jefferson out. Sam Pittman is a phenomenal coach. He knows what he's doing. But you gotta put your positions out there more. Where was Sanders in this game? Where was Sanders? He got neutralized. The only guy that was a threat for Texas A&M's defense was KJ Jefferson. And Thompson only had 2 receptions with 57 receiving yards. Why didn't he get the call more? If I were him, I'd be pissed off. Come back with a better game plan, Arkansas, because you got Alabama coming up. Next game, which I thought this game was going to be a blowout. Even though I have this game listed after the Alabama-Vanderbilt game, I'm going to talk about this game first because former powerhouse in the Big Ten, Wisconsin, or at least on the west side of the Big Ten, squaring off against Ohio State, which I thought Ohio State started to click at the right time. In conference play against a so-called good defense. And really, Ohio State made them look like chopped lamb. They made them look like tomato can. I mean, OH looks, oh my God, they look good. CJ Stroud, I mean, 17 for 27, 281 passing yards, 5 touchdowns, 1 interception. Despite that 1 interception, he played a fantastic game. Graham Mertz didn't even get over 100. 94 yards passing. Are you kidding me? Allen had 165 rushing yards with 23 carries, though, for the Badgers. 1 touchdown. Trey Henderson, 21 carries, 121 rushing yards. Egbuka for Ohio State, 6 receptions, 118 receiving yards, 2 touchdowns. Wisconsin's defense is a good run defense, but got pushed around by Henderson. I'm sorry. Trey Henderson. Gosh. But Ohio State looked good in this game. Wisconsin looked like dog shit out there. And that's what Ohio State can do to good teams like Wisconsin. 52-21 Ohio State with the victory. Next game, I got Alabama squaring off against Vanderbilt. Everybody was hyping up Vanderbilt because they beat the shit out of Hawaii. Why am I not surprised about this score? Because it's fucking Vanderbilt. Okay? And I'm sorry to be so negative about this team, but y'all were hyping up Vanderbilt to be a good football team in the SEC. Oh, watch out for Vanderbilt. 3-0 Vanderbilt. They're going to be good this year. 3-1 Vanderbilt. They lost. They'll bounce back. They'll be more competitive against Alabama. I don't think so. Alabama pretty much did the same thing to Vanderbilt than what the old Alabama would do to the old Vanderbilt with Derek Mason as the head coach. I mean, excuse me. Bryce Young torching that defense. 25 for 36, 385 passing yards, and 4 touchdowns. Flawless victory for the Crimson Tide. I'm not impressed, by the way, because they were supposed to win that game. They were supposed to go out there and dominate against Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt is a baseball school. Plain and simple. In football, they are a tomato can. Next game. This game went the way I thought it would go. 41-10. NC State at home against UConn. And, man, the Wolfpack, they have really shown some really good football lately. And it's going to be tough to pick against Clemson and NC State. I mean, this is going to be good football to watch. Leary, 32 for 44, 320 passing yards, 4 touchdowns, 1 pick. I mean, despite that pick, he had a phenomenal game against the Huskies. I mean, the defense looks good. They held the running back to Rosa to 43 rushing yards. They hold Turner 39 passing yards. 39 passing yards. I don't care what level you are on. 39 passing yards for a passing defense is killer. I couldn't even get that on Madden. I couldn't even get that on NCAA. It's hard to hold an offense below 50 passing yards. And NC State did that. But with the offense that they're playing next week, That will be interesting. NC State just got done whooping a tomato can. Clemson just got done beating Wake Forest at Wake Forest. Now they're going to Death Valley. That will be a good game to cover. I'm excited for that game. Next game. Okay. This game. I thought this game would be very difficult for Oklahoma. I did pick Oklahoma to win. But history has repeated itself yet again, and the Sooners go down to the Kansas State Wildcats. Adrian Martinez looked phenomenal out there. 21 for 34, 234 passing yards, 1 touchdown. Dylan Gabriel looked fantastic out there. 26 for 39, 330 passing yards, 4 touchdowns. But Adrian Martinez, 5 total touchdowns, 4 in rushing. 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 21 carries, 148 rushing yards. I mean, Kansas State, be careful with that because Nebraska tried to do this with Adrian Martinez before. And look what happened. They couldn't do it. They were unsuccessful. But if you can find a game plan where you can balance out Martinez and Deuce Vaughn, watch out for the Wildcats. They're a good football team. Oklahoma has been playing tomato cans up until this point. Now, Kansas State did lose to Tulane, but they just beat the number 6 team in the country. So I might want to watch out for Kansas State if I'm anybody in the Big 12. Oklahoma State, Baylor, Texas, Kansas, anybody. Watch out for them Purple Power Ranger Cats because they played good football against an Oklahoma team that, frankly, I thought they were going to have trouble in this game. But I did pick them to win because it's safe to pick Oklahoma. But history repeats itself. Maybe I'll make a note of it next year when Oklahoma plays against Kansas State. Kansas State always plays tough against Oklahoma. Texas Tech plays tough against Texas. It makes sense. All right. Next, we got USC traveling to Oregon State, where they have been in the top 10 before in past time. And Oregon State has shocked the world before. Were they going to do it again? It looked like it in the first half. 7-3 at the end of the half. And then in the second half, it was back and forth. Travis Dye with the touchdown, 7 yards. And then Jam Griffin for Oregon State scored. 4 minutes and 41 seconds left in the game. Jam Griffin punches it in for a touchdown, 18-yard run. And then, what have I been saying about Caleb Williams and Jordan Addison? Best quarterback and wide receiver combo in college football, in my opinion. The best quarterback receiver duo in college football. And look what happened. 21-yard pass from Caleb Williams to Jordan Addison. I mean, it was a freaking dime. It was beautiful. With 1 minute and 13 seconds left. Oregon State doesn't have the offense to drive down the field. Lincoln Riley's smart. He knows what he's doing. And now the Trojans marched into Oregon State, played a tough Oregon State team, undefeated. Undefeated. Both teams were, and they fought hard. 17-14, the Trojans escape Oregon State's wrath. I mean, look at the stats. 16 for 36, 180 passing yards, and 1 touchdown. But Travis Dye had a phenomenal game. 19 carries, 133 rushing yards, 1 touchdown. But Jan Griffin, 12 carries, 84 yards, 1 touchdown. I wouldn't be surprised if Oregon State ends up being in the mix in the Pac-12 championship or in second or third with the way they've been playing. And they just played the best team in the Pac-12, in my opinion. Possible playoff contender. And there's much more room to grow for USC. And these are all guys from the transfer portal that went into USC. So I expect great things out of Lincoln Riley's era of USC. Next game, we're going to talk about BYU squaring off against the Wyoming Cowboys. Hall had a phenomenal game. 26 for 32 pass completions to attempts. 337 passing yards and 4 touchdowns. Hall is a great quarterback, and BYU is a phenomenal team. Davis, 13 carries, 131 rushing yards. Hill, 5 receptions, 160 receiving yards. 2 touchdowns for Hill. But they played a tough Wyoming Cowboy football team. I mean, they were not going to let BYU out there. They were not going to let BYU beat down on them, but BYU held them convincingly, and kudos to BYU, man. They bounced back after a loss to Oregon, and they played great against the Wyoming Cowboy defense. Next game, we got Utah taking on a Herm Edwards-less Arizona State Sun Devil team. Now, I wasn't too happy about Arizona State firing. I'm not a fan of early season firings. I'm not. Play through the season because you don't know how good this team really is until the end of the season, or basically week 8. But I still hate early season firings. I really do. But it was time for Herm Edwards to go. It really was. And this should have been an easy win, and it was an easy win. Cameron Rising, 19 for 29, 260 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 interception. Emory Jones, 21 for 36, 261 passing yards, 1 touchdown, and 2 interceptions. I mean, 34-13. It was Utah went in there and did what they were supposed to do. Last ranked game before I go to the unranked game of the week for the PMP live. We got Stanford taking on Washington. Now, this game was kind of confusing because I didn't realize Washington was this good this year. This is another team in the mix to be in the Pac-12 championship for the North. But Washington came in strong against Stanford, was up 30-7 at the end of the third. And they pretty much just controlled the way this game was going. And Michael Penix Jr., he looks good. He played absolutely phenomenal. 22 for 37, 309 passing yards, 2 touchdowns. Tala Papa, 13 carries, 120 rushing yards with 1 touchdown. Odunze, 8 receptions, 161 receiving yards and 1 touchdown. McKee, 286 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception, with 17 completions and 26 attempts. So he didn't have a bad game. He just had that one slip up with the interception, but man, Washington beat down Stanford 40-22. Now I'm going to go to the unranked game of the week for week 4, and that'll conclude our recap for week 3 and week 4. And I'm going to let y'all know this game is a rivalry game right here. But it's one of those rivalry games that they're in the same area. They're not spread out by distance. They're not different regions in the state. They are in the area, the DFW area, where you had TCU traveling undefeated and undisputed against the 2-1 SMU Mustangs, who just came off of a loss against the very, very tough Maryland team that I thought was not as good as I thought that they are as good, or you know what I'm trying to say. TCU came out firing 14-0 and pretty much bumped up the score 28-7 before the end of the half, but then Rasheed Rice caught a reception from Tanner Mordecai, which led to the half 28-14 TCU. I picked TCU to win, by the way. Then Trey Seegers scores a running touchdown. Then TCU extended the lead 35-21, and Seegers again scores a running touchdown. Brings the score 35-27. Then, with 2 minutes left to play, DeMercado ran a 63-yard run against that tough Mustang defense to extend the lead 42-27, and Mordecai throws a 35-yard touchdown pass to Jake Bailey to bring the score 42-34 with 1:04 left, and Max Duggan and the Horned Frogs beat the Mustangs because SMU was talking that shit earlier in the season. If you don't remember, SMU put up a billboard and said this is Mustang country or something like that on a billboard in Fort Worth. And I'm pretty sure TCU did not take that lightly, and they pretty much controlled this game. And the Horned Frogs won 42-34. Max Duggan, 22 for 29, 278 passing yards, 3 touchdowns. Miller, 17 carries, 142 rushing yards, 1 touchdown. Siggers, 19 carries, 60 yards, but 3 touchdowns. That's a weird stat. Tanner Mordecai, 27 for 49, 372 yards passing, 2 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. That's what hurt SMU, was the turnovers and not being able to do anything on offense until the late second quarter. And TCU was the odds-on favorite in this game. I picked TCU, and that concludes week 4 and week 3 because I wanted to get a little bit of week 3 in there just to spice up the college football talk. So that brings me to my records. Last week, I had 18 correct picks with 6 incorrect picks. I'm keeping track of my picks. And so far, I am doing a phenomenal job as far as picks. 83 and 22, folks. I have a 79% correct pick percentage. Almost 80%. Not bad. Not too shabby. Hopefully I get a lot more this week. Hopefully I shoot up into that 85 region. That just goes to show that I'm better than ESPN. I'm better than Stephen A. Smith. Just kidding. I don't know if I'm better than anybody from ESPN. I'm just some dumbass from small town in coastal Bend, Texas. But anyway, just joking about all that. But anyway, back to week 5. Okay. Now, this is week 5 of college football. This is where we start to see teams crumble. This is where we start to see teams open up. And you start to see me have a hard time choosing a lot more. Because week 5 is probably one of the most dangerous weeks to pick college football games because you can never be too sure who's going to win, who's going to lose. But anyway, so Thursday, we have a ranked game between Utah State and BYU. Okay, Utah State coming in at 1-3, BYU at 3-1, ranked 19th in the country. Okay, Hall 103 and 103 out of 144 pass completions to attempts. 1,164 passing yards, 9 touchdowns, and only 1 interception. Man, this was an easy pick for me. I got BYU winning big in this one. Plain and simple. Friday, we have a much more difficult matchup between number 15 Washington. They'll be traveling down to Los Angeles to take on the UCLA Bruins. Now, the Bruins have been playing pretty decent football as of late. Crushing tomato cans. I mean, they barely beat South Alabama, so I knew instantly who to pick in this matchup. But let's take a look at the stats first. Michael Penix Jr., 92 for 143 pass attempts and completions. Almost 1,400 yards passing. 12 touchdowns and 1 interception. He has played great football. And DTR over there in UCLA, 80 completions for 107 pass attempts, only 896 passing yards, 8 touchdowns, and 1 interception. So this is going to be an interesting quarterback battle. Indiana, the transfer against a UCLA original. Zach Charbonnet, 43 carries, 293 rushing yards. So he's almost at 300 yards, folks, and 4 touchdowns. Or he's almost at 300. I'm sorry. But Talapapa, he's over 300 yards, 307 rush yards with 48 carries and 3 touchdowns. That'll be an interesting running back matchup. But I got the Huskies winning this game. And that'll end their 7-game win. Their 7-game losing streak to the Bruins. So this is going to be a tough one for Washington at UCLA, but I think they'll come out swinging, and I think they'll win the game. All right, so now we're on to Saturday, where we got some games lined up for you. I do got to say, man, there's going to be games where I will say, man, this was hard to pick, or, man, this was an easy pick. There's no in between. There's no in between for these games. But let's start off with Michigan at Iowa, okay? Michigan at 4-0, Iowa at 3-1. Michigan on the road to go play Iowa. And this is a Big Ten title rematch where Michigan pretty much pummeled Iowa State. Or not Iowa State, Iowa. Now, J.J. McCarthy, he stepped in, believe, week 2 or week 3. And he's almost at 700 yards passing, but Corum is almost at 500 yards rushing with 478 yards rushing, 9 touchdowns, 6 carries. That kid is electric. I love watching him play. I think Michigan gets the job done. I don't think Iowa has an offense to play against that Michigan defense. And I think Iowa's defense is going to have trouble against Blake Corum and that offense for Michigan. So I got Michigan with the dub. Next game, I got number 7 Kentucky traveling to Ole Miss, where Will Levis will take on Jackson Dart. Will Levis, he's a phenomenal quarterback. 79 completions out of 117 attempts. 1,185 yards passing. 10 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, though. Jackson Dart, 51 completions out of 82 attempts, 697 passing yards, 5 total touchdowns, or 5 passing touchdowns and 2 interceptions. Now, this is going to be interesting. I like the Robinson and Mingo matchup at wide receiver. Mingo with 12 receptions, 257 receiving yards, and 1 touchdown. Robinson, 20 receptions, 349 passing yards, and 2 touchdowns. I like this matchup. I really do. This was one of the ones that I was like, man, this is a head scratcher, because they both didn't have convincing wins. They haven't really convinced me on being a SEC title contender. But I like what Lane Kiffin's doing on one end, and I like what Mark Stoops is doing on the other end for both programs. Building them up to compete against Alabama, to compete against Georgia. But one of those two teams has to lose. They're both 4-0. Ole Miss is the odds-on favorite according to the ESPN app. Notable wins: Ole Miss beating Georgia Tech 42-0, and Kentucky beating Florida when Florida was ranked number 12, 26-16. I'm picking Ole Miss. I think they have a better overall team. Will Levis is a phenomenal football player, but I think he's going to have trouble against that Ole Miss front line that they have. Those big hog wilies over there. And I think that Kentucky defense is going to have trouble with Judkins, who has 70 carries and almost 430 yards rushing with 5 touchdowns. So I'm picking the Rebels. Next game, number 18, Oklahoma. So they dropped quite a bit after losing to Kansas State at home. They'll be traveling to an undefeated and undisputed TCU Horned Frogs team, where Max Duggan, who has been the starter for 3 years now for the Horned Frogs, he'll take on Dylan Gabriel. Dylan Gabriel has not thrown an interception this year. Neither has Max Duggan. One of these, or both of these two, could potentially throw an interception in this game. Gray with exactly 400 yards rushing, 2 touchdowns. Miller, 250 yards rushing, 3 touchdowns. Marvin Mims, almost 400 yards receiving with 3 touchdowns. Davis, 126 receiving yards with just 7 receptions and 2 touchdowns. TCU is dangerous, especially this year. And I think they just proved it against SMU. They did not have the strength of schedule like Oklahoma did. And I'm talking about like they didn't play tomato cans like Oklahoma did. Colorado may be terrible right now, but they could potentially bounce up. That's a Power 5 school. Who did Oklahoma play? UTEP. They were supposed to win that game. They played against Kent State. 7-3 at the half. Tomato can. They impressed everybody playing against Nebraska, who just got done firing Scott Frost. They were supposed to pummel the Cornhuskers, people. And y'all want to be impressed with Oklahoma. So, we think as a society that Kansas State should not beat Oklahoma. Well, I'm sorry to tell you that history repeats itself. Kansas State comes out with a win over Oklahoma because that's the first test that they had to play against. TCU played against SMU, who is a tough team. They competed against Maryland. They lost to Maryland by 7. Okay, well, surely TCU's going to struggle. They controlled that game. They controlled their offense. They controlled the way they were supposed to play against SMU. Now, they only give up 100 yards rushing total. It doesn't matter. 100 yards total on defense. Their pass yards is what hurts them. I'm not really comparing stats because Oklahoma played against tomato cans. They didn't really play well against Kansas State. And Kansas State is not a tomato can, by the way. Kansas State controlled that game. And that's why I'm going with the TCU Horned Frogs. I think TCU is a much more physical team than Kansas State, a much better team than Kansas State, and Oklahoma is in for a rude awakening. I think they're going to drop to 3-2 after playing against TCU. Oklahoma's the odds-on favorite. Let's see if the Horned Frogs can prove people wrong again, because I think People don't realize TCU is good this year. People didn't realize Texas Tech was going to be good. So they picked Texas. I picked Texas because, well, they're my team, and I had a certain feeling that we could easily pull it out, but I knew Texas Tech was going to be competitive, and they beat us. So that's how I feel about TCU. But I'm picking TCU because they're at home. Amon G. Carter, loud stadium. Oklahoma has had trouble at Amon G. Carter before, especially when TCU is undefeated. And TCU is undefeated. They are supposed to be good this year. Sonny Dykes knows what he's doing there at TCU. Brent Venables, I'm sorry. I respect you as a defensive coordinator, but not as an offensive coordinator, man. I'm sorry, but I got TCU winning. Next game should be a fairly easy matchup, an easier matchup, where Tanner Morgan and the Golden Gophers will take on O'Connell and the Purdue Boilermakers at home in Minnesota. I got Minnesota winning this game, number 21 Minnesota. Ibrahim, I mean, that guy is a freaking weapon. 89 carries, 567 rushing yards, 8 touchdowns for that guy. I mean, I think Purdue's going to have trouble against him in the run game because they allow 116 yards rushing. And, man, that Minnesota defense is good. If you saw them against Michigan State, whoa, man. I'm excited. I'm excited for this Minnesota Golden Gophers team, man. They look good this year and more balanced this year offensively. PJ Fleck, good stuff, buddy. Good stuff. I got the Golden Gophers winning. Next game was a toss-up for me. Both teams coming off of big wins against the two teams that are going into the SEC. The Texas Tech Red Raiders travel in Manhattan, which is probably going to be a big crowd in Manhattan as the number 25 Kansas State Wildcats step into the picture in the top 25. Devin Smith, Adrian Martinez. This is going to be a good matchup, folks. I really am excited to see this matchup. But I think it's going to come down to who has the better defense. I really do. And Texas Tech, they played against 3 straight ranked teams. Kansas State, they lost to Tulane. They blew out Missouri. Surprising. I'm still very surprised about that. And they beat controllably Oklahoma. So this is a very interesting matchup. But I'm sticking to my guns, and I'm going to go with the away team, Texas Tech. I think they really showed last week that they can play football, folks. And Kansas State, yeah, they beat Oklahoma, but I think Texas Tech had a better strength of schedule than what Kansas State did. Even though they did beat Oklahoma at Norman, but I just think Texas Tech has the edge in this game. I think they got the meaner guys. They got the better defense than what Kansas State has. And we'll see. I might be wrong on this one. This one was a tough one to call. I really had to think about this one. I think Donovan Smith's going to have a good game. Price is going to have a good game for Texas Tech. But like I said, I'm going with the Red Raiders on this one. Next game, we got the Oregon State Beavers, who just come off of a tough loss at home, scoring off against Utah, a team that lost to Florida, but they are starting to pick up their stride. Yada, yada, yada. Cam Rising, 10 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, almost 1,000 yards passing. Nolan, he's more balanced with the touchdowns and interceptions ratio. 7 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. This is going to be a fun matchup. One high-scoring offense versus a very tough defense to defend or to play against. And they beat Boise State. They beat Fresno State. And they competed against USC. Utah, on the other hand, lost to Florida and went on to just dominate the rest of the schedule. Southern Utah, San Diego State, and Arizona State. But my problem with Utah is this. I don't think they're that good. I don't think they deserve that 12th spot. I got the Oregon State Beavers winning this game. I think Oregon State played with the best team in the Pac-12, and they almost beat the best team in the Pac-12. Yeah, they were at home, and they're going to Utah in a higher elevation, but there's something about this Oregon State team I like. I like this team. And I really am excited to see what they can do. So next game, this one was a toss-up for me. I might have to change my pick because I did prematurely pick this game. Got Bryce Young taking on KJ Jefferson, potential Heisman contender matchup. Bryce Young, 2021 Heisman Trophy winner. He has thrown 83 completions out of 121 attempts. He broke 1,000 yards last week at 1,029 yards with 13 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. KJ Jefferson, 67 pass completions, 97 pass attempts, almost at 950 passing yards, 8 touchdowns, and 1 interception. Now, what makes this game really hard to pick is the fact that Arkansas is playing at home. And they played tough against Alabama last year. This is the same Alabama that we seen last year. Dominates tomato cans and then plays tough teams, almost losing to tough teams. Arkansas, I just think they did not utilize their weapons enough against Texas A&M. And let's be honest, Arkansas played a very tough Texas A&M team. They played a very tough Texas A&M defense. Probably as good as defense you can get in the SEC. But I think I'm going to stick to I'm actually going to stick to my guns because I was really considering changing my pick. I'm going to go with the upset. Number 20, Arkansas. I think Arkansas is going to bring the heat, and Alabama's going to have trouble against a very good Arkansas Razorback team. And they got Texas A&M next week. So, if I'm Alabama, I don't look past Arkansas to face Texas A&M. I think about Arkansas, and Nick Saban is telling his boys, we need to look at Arkansas. Just because they lost to Texas A&M does not mean a damn thing. So I got Arkansas winning this game, but it'll be very, very, very close. My only problem with Arkansas is their pass defense. Their accumulated pass allowed is 302 passing yards per game. I think Arkansas is going to give Alabama hell. And we'll see. Next game, we got 3-1 Rutgers, who is a 1.7%. They have a 1.7 chance of victory over the number 3 Ohio State team, who's really starting to come together. And Rutgers has a tough defense, folks. Rutgers has held teams per game 249 total yards, 193 passing yards, and 56 rush yards. Take for granted they did play against Boston College, barely won that game. Play against Wagner, 66-7. Played against Temple, barely won that game. Played against Iowa. Iowa beat them 27-10, handing them their first loss. But now looking at Ohio State, they are progressing offensively. They're starting to click. They started off poor against Notre Dame, 21-10. They did win that game. 45-12, Arkansas State. Yeah, tomato can. Toledo, 77-21. Yeah, it's still a tomato can, but pretty impressive to score 77 if you're Ohio State. Wisconsin, 52-21. Oh, shit. So, Ohio State playing at home against Rutgers, who's got a tough defense. Ohio State's going to beat their ass. I got Ohio State winning this game big. CJ Stroud and those wide receivers, Marvin Harrison Jr. and Egbuka, are killing it. Trey Henderson, killing it. Next game, got Northwestern. Good old Northwestern, 1-3 after pretty much winning against Nebraska and then 3-game losing streak, squaring off against a 4-0 number 11 Penn State Nittany Lions team. Sean Clifford, who's looked pretty impressive, 8 touchdowns, 1 interception, 890 yards passing, 75 out of 117 completions and attempts. I think this game's going to go bad for Northwestern. This was fairly easy. I got Penn State winning. Next game. This game was hard for me to pick. Another game I really had to think about because you got Florida State, 4-0. First time since the Jimbo Fisher era. Then you got Sam Hartman and the Wake Forest Demon Deacons, who just had a heartbreaking loss against the Clemson Tigers. Both quarterbacks are almost at 1,000 yards passing. Sam Hartman at 962. Jordan Travis at 945. Hartman with 13 touchdowns. Travis with 5 touchdowns. But I'm really excited for this game. I think this is going to be a high-scoring affair. And But the problem with me saying that is Florida State's defense is really good on the pass game, but the run game is terrible. 144 yards rushing per game is not going to do any justice. And honestly, this is a tough task to play against good old Wake Forest. So I'm thinking in my head, who should I pick? Who should I pick? Oh, man. Then it hit me. Where's the game going to be at? Tallahassee, Florida. Knowles Country, 4-0 for the first time since Jimbo Fisher era. I'm going with the Tomahawk throwing. Seminoles winning in this game. Next game I got lined out for you guys. We got the Oklahoma State Cowboys traveling to Waco to take on the Baylor Bears in a Big 12 championship rematch. Spencer Sanders has been thinking about this game since last season. And Baylor, they are a tough team to play against this year. They played a tough BYU team and lost, but they really, really hit their stride. I think Baylor is a really good football team. Oklahoma State, they didn't really play anybody up to par, you know. Yes, they're 3-0. Yeah, they've been winning games, but they haven't impressed me yet. Their defense has given up more yards than anybody really in the Big 12 anyway. Yeah, they score points, but they give up too many points, and you can't do that against Baylor. Baylor's defense is arguably the best defense in the Big 12. So I'm going to go with Baylor in this one. It really wasn't that hard for me to pick. I think Baylor is going to hand Oklahoma State their first loss. Next game, we go to Starkville, where the number 17 Texas A&M Aggies, they come off of a big win, a much-needed win over Arkansas. But they're traveling to Mississippi State, who's 3-1 as well. Will Rogers, 16 touchdowns, 3 interceptions under the Michael Leach system. Almost at 1,400 yards receiving or passing. I think this is going to be a good matchup. Texas A&M's defense versus Mississippi State's offense. And yeah, they lost to LSU, but they beat Memphis. They beat Arizona. And they did what they were supposed to do against Bowling Green. Now, A&M, they didn't really impress me up until the Arkansas game. The defense impressed me. The defense can't bail you out if you play against a Mike Leach team. So I got the Mississippi State Bulldogs winning this game. And yeah, I'm a Longhorn fan, and I do pick against Texas A&M a lot. But their offense hasn't shown me anything. Akane is the only guy on that offense has really shown me a lot of things. Evan Stewart hasn't gotten many touches as of late. Yeah, against Arkansas he did, but not against the teams that they needed to play against, offensively. So, next game, we're going to go to number 1 Georgia, traveling to Missouri to take on the Missouri Tigers. Now, this game was easy. Even though Georgia had a minor setback last week and almost shit the can against Kent State, I think Georgia's going to bounce back. I think Georgia is going to really punch Missouri in the mouth in this game. I got Georgia beating Missouri. This game was hard. This game is my game of the week. Right here. NC State, number 10, 4-0. Traveling to number 5, 4-0. Clemson. Leary versus DJU. Both quarterbacks have been playing excellent. Running backs have been playing excellent. Receivers have been playing excellent. Why am I bringing up offense? Because both of them have been playing really good offense. And NC State impressed me against Texas Tech, but Clemson impressed me more against Wake Forest. And so this was hard, but I had to pick Clemson over NC State. I think Clemson is facing the top ACC defense in the conference, but man, I got Clemson winning big in this game. Next game, got 3 more ranked games, and then we'll go over 4 more unranked games. Got Pitt at home against Georgia Tech. That's an easy pick for me. I picked Pittsburgh over the Yellow Jackets. I mean, Georgia Tech is just sad. They are a sad football team to watch. They get blown out by everybody. They just got their ass kicked by Ole Miss, Clemson, and UCF. Their biggest win was their only win, and they played an FCS school and barely beat them, in my opinion. Now, Pitt, they played a tough West Virginia team. They barely lost to Tennessee, who I think is a very good contender to beat Georgia this year. They beat Western Michigan convincingly. They beat Rhode Island convincingly. I think Pitt is going to convincingly beat the brakes off of Georgia Tech. Next game, I got Stanford at Oregon. Oregon's been hitting their stride lately, folks. So watch out for the Ducks, as I got them winning this game pretty convincingly. Bo Nix has been playing really well. His receivers are starting to click with him. And, yeah, they don't really have a good defense, but the run defense is absolutely great. Stanford, after that game against Washington, I just don't think they have what it takes. Last ranked game that I'm going to go over is Arizona State traveling to Los Angeles to take on the transfer portal. I mean, the USC Trojans. Caleb Williams, he's at 1,000 yards passing. He has not thrown a pick yet. Jordan Addison, 21 receptions, 337 receiving yards, and 6 touchdowns. I think it's going to be a Williams and Addison show. I think USC is going to dominate in this game. Arizona State doesn't have a head coach, a for sure head coach, and it's sad to see the state of the Sun Devils, and USC is going to win big. Next game, which is the first unranked game of the week, 2 teams that are in the Big 12. One of them just had a big win over Virginia Tech. The other one just had a big loss to Texas Tech. Now there's rumors swarming around that Quinn Ewers is starting to take snaps for Texas. Bijan's walking around the whole campus with the football and trying to get people to knock the ball out so that way he can not fumble. He has one fumble this season, but kid is a legend. I think this is going to be a decent game to watch. It's just going to come down to who's got the better offense in this game. Pretty much a Big 12 matchup. Any Big 12 matchup, who's got the better offense or who's got the better defense? West Virginia's on a 2-game winning streak, though. So they're red hot. Texas, they're on a pitter-patter. I got Texas winning this game. I think Texas really opens up on offense, and they stop JT Daniels and that Donaldson. I really do think that Texas has the capability to stop that kid. But I think Texas' defense is really going to open up the show, and they're going to be playing in a live crowd. So I think it's going to be a good game to watch, but I think Texas is going to unload on West Virginia. Next game, Iowa State, who just came off of a loss to Baylor, traveling to a Kansas JR team that nobody expected to be undefeated. I got to say, I'm very impressed with the way Kansas has played as of late. And, this game is going to be fun to watch. 3-1 Iowa State taking on 4-0 Kansas. I think Kansas is here to doubt or to say, all right, you want to doubt us? All right, we'll beat West Virginia. All right, we'll go in and we'll beat the brakes off of Houston. All right, we'll beat Duke. We'll beat anybody that you throw at us. And, man, I haven't been more impressed with Kansas until this year. I mean, they really stepped up to the plate this year. And a lot of it has to do with this kid right here, Jalen Daniels, who might be in the running for the Heisman this year for Kansas. 11 touchdowns, 1 pick. But what people are most impressed about is his ability to control the offensive game. Okay? And I'm definitely excited to watch this game. But I think the hype train for Kansas stops here against Iowa State. And I think Iowa State's going to beat them. Do I think convincingly? I don't think convincingly. I think it'll be a tough matchup for Iowa State, but I think they're going to pull it out and leave Lawrence with a W. Next game, got LSU. 3-1 LSU. Taking on 3-1 Auburn. So, people are screaming for firing Brian Harsin. But I got to say, Auburn got lucky last week. And they're about to play against JT Daniels. Another dual threat guy that you don't want to mess with. Jaden Daniels, I mean, that guy, he's just incredible. He could throw, he could pass. He's dangerous. I think Auburn's going to have trouble against this guy. They've played close with everybody that they played against, except for Penn State, and Penn State beat the whole hell out of Auburn. I got LSU winning this game convincingly. just too much offense for Auburn to handle. Next game, I got Virginia taking on Duke. 2-2 Cavaliers, who barely lost to a tough Syracuse team, scoring off against the Blue Devils. Armstrong hasn't had his best season. 3 touchdowns with 4 interceptions. Leonard with 6 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. This game was tough to call. Virginia convincingly lost to Illinois, but barely lost to Syracuse. Barely beat ODU. Duke 3-0 to start out with, and then barely lost to Kansas, a tough Kansas team. But I got the away team in this game. I got the Cavaliers beating the Blue Devils in this game. It's a gamble, but I'm going with it. I'm sticking to that. And my last game, which is a Sunday game, folks. One of the 2 Sunday games. SMU, who lost two straight games in a row, taking on a 3-1 UCF team that I'm pretty high on this year. Plumlee, he's got over 1,200 yards total to himself, 400 of those in rushing. Tanner Mordecai, he's almost at 1,400 yards passing, 12 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. This is another tough matchup for SMU. Can they finally pull it off? And can they finally win a game that's close? I don't think so. I got UCF winning this game. I think UCF's going to give them trouble, and they're on a win streak, even though they played against Florida Atlantic and Georgia Tech. I think that builds their confidence, and that'll give them a win in the American Conference and bring them 1-0 in the American Conference. But that concludes PMP Live Week 3, Week 4 recap, and Week 5 predictions. I'm so happy to be back, guys. I did not want to go over to the 2-hour mark, but I ended up going to the 2-hour mark. But I'm excited for this week of football, and I can't wait. I can't wait to see how many I get right. I hope I get a lot right this time, which will bring that 79% prediction completion correction. I don't know what to say, but let's be honest, guys. I am excited for this week. It's going to be a lot of good football to watch. A lot of toss-ups in there. A lot of toss-ups. And you're really – it's pretty much the start of conference play throughout all the conferences. And you want to see this matchup. You want to see all these matchups. The Big 12 right now does not have anybody under 500. So you want to see every matchup to see who drops, who bumps, you know. So I am very excited, folks, for this week of college football. And really, you're going to start seeing who's going to bounce into the Heisman polls. Right now, we got Bryce Young and C.J. Stroud. Will we see Bijan in there? Will we see a newcomer, Daniels from Kansas? Will he perform at a Heisman level against Iowa State? Who knows? Who knows? At the end of the day, Saturday, at the end of the whistle, you will find out who wins, who loses, who will be in the Heisman contention, who is in the college football playoff. Who knows? But I got to say this. I'm happy to be back on live. Unfortunately, I was sick last week with a common cold. I like to think it is. But I'm back. I'm better than ever. And we are the cream of the crop in all of podcasting in football. Not in that crap sport baseball. Okay? We are the PMP, Pigskin Mafia Podcast. Thank you for tuning in. For those that tuned in, if you're going to watch later, thank you for watching in the future. And thank you for watching later on, guys. And please support us on YouTube. Subscribe, like, hit that notification bell. Follow us on our Facebook page, Pigskin Mafia Podcast. Follow us on Instagram at Pigskin Mafia Pod. Same thing with Twitter, at Pigskin Mafia Pod, where we kind of go over recruiting more on the Twitter side. So thank you guys for tuning in, and I will see y'all later tonight, where I alone just talk about the NFL, recap a little bit of the NFL. So thank you guys for joining. Love you guys. Goodbye.